As we are back for the first full show of the new year, the Ohio State Buckeyes season is unfortunately over. However, there's a player, QB1, CJ Stroud, who played out of his mind against Georgia. And today we're going to appreciate CJ Stroud for his performance in the Peach Bowl.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes from the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Tuesday, January 3rd in the year 2023, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. During this episode, we will discuss a little bit about what we saw from the Buckeyes in the Peach Bowl, but mainly this is going to be a CJ Stroud appreciation show because he played the best game of his life Saturday evening against the Georgia Bulldogs. And here with us to discuss Stroud's performance, what we witnessed on Saturday evening from the Buckeyes in the Peach Bowl, it's my guy, our guy, Mo Murphy from the Off the Ball Network. He is the host of the UpnFlamez Podcast. We heard from Mo recently, about a week and a half ago. He's here with us once again. Mo, Happy New Year, and welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, what's going on, bro? But first and foremost, want to say Happy New Year. Hope you brought in the New Year good. Being Buckeyes fans, it's mixed feelings about how we feel on New Year's Eve. But yeah, just glad to be back on here and really at least have some positive things to say and walk away from a loss knowing that if there's one person that we're going to talk about that I'm proud of, it's the guy that's going to be the feature of this show.
Yes, sir. CJ Stroud, QB1 at Ohio State, QB number 1 in your hearts as well, because that man played out of his mind. I went into this game, Mo, against Georgia, not expecting Ohio State to win the game. I kind of thought it was going to be a deja vu type of experience and moment during the game where we know how they coach, we know how they rotate, we know how these players play. It's not going to be a great formula to win this game. It was basically the formula that Ohio State needed to win this game. Injuries, turnovers on both sides, whatever you want to say. The formula Ohio State had, we thought was good enough. A 50-yard field goal was missed. If that goes in, we're having a completely different conversation on this Tuesday, and the first Tuesday in the new year. But Mo, before we get to Stroud, what were some of your takeaways from the game Saturday evening where Ohio State barely lost to Georgia?
Oh, my first takeaway is I feel like going into this game, there was two people with a lot of pressure, and it was CJ Stroud. Obviously, like NFL-wise and all the questions that you had about Stroud, I think were answered. And I think Ryan Day and like his play calling and can he get the job done? And I mean, a 1-point loss, but I think he proved a lot of things like, and I'm not saying had we got blown out, he was going to get fired or nothing, but the seat was going to get a little warm. Like going into next year, the expectation could be coaching for his job. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if the outcome of this game should have determined that regardless, but I could hear the rumblings. I've already started seeing it. I mean, you know what it was like after the Michigan game. So I think both of them came into the game with a lot to prove. And to me, they proved a lot. You can start picking apart either one of them, not really Stroud, but you could say Ryan Day wasn't as aggressive in that last minute of play calling to get closer than a 50-yard field goal. But, man, he watches the kicker, man. He's the coach. He sees it. He knows how close he needs to get because he knows he's seen him hit these time and time and time again. And pressure bust pipes, and that's just the difference. And I also seen that, bro, I just don't know if we're ever going to go back to having, like, that 2019 defense. Like, and I think that's that Urban Meyer era of defense all the way up into the players that Ryan Day was inherited. I mean, we're probably better offensively now, but defensively, the drop-off from, like, 2019's defense that he was inherited to now, I mean, the lack of DB play, the lack of pass rushers, like, yeah, we get these guys, but for some reason, they're not performing. Like, Jack Sawyer was arguably the best guy coming out of high school, and he's really yet to even be adequate enough to be on the field all the time. He's not a guy I feel like I have to have him on the field. Zach Harrison was supposed to be the next Chase Young. So I do look at, like, I think the recruiting on the defense side shows. And I think Jim Knowles has to go to the drawing board too, because I think his pride of his 3-3-5 and fully committing to that really cost him the game, because you were not playing to not give up the big plays, and you gave up a big play that essentially ended up losing you the game.
Yeah, man. The defensive conversation is what we're going to have later in the week on the show, because that was one that was a little bit more confusing the entire year. I think overall team speed on defense is not what you would want it to be. I think Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg at linebacker, they're adequate. They're good sideline to sideline. They're getting better at that. I think Troy Malowau and Harrison played better. Not what you would say all the hype was there, but Harrison played better this season. The interior of the D-line, there was rotation and questions there all season. But I think the DB speed is one that especially a safety, is one where I'm just like, this ain't it. Like, something has to get a little bit better. And even though there's issues on defense, man, you mentioned Ryan Day earlier in your comments. I have never seen Ryan Day coach like he did. Not saying like coaching the play calling, bro. He was way more animated, sort of a whole lot more juice and energy, and I mean just the fist pumps. And I'm like, hey man, college football better watch out, because if Ryan Day cracks something with this team and their motivation, and if we see this week in, week out, they better watch out. Because if that was what we saw from the offense after a month off, imagine what Ryan Day has months off being able to work on this defense. Because I know Jim Knowles is the head coach of the defense, but I don't think Ryan Day is satisfied with what we have seen from this defense this year. And so I do think, though, with the months off between now and the beginning of next season, a few months before spring practice starts, I do think Ryan Day might get a little bit more hands-on with the defensive philosophy and player development side. And if that's the case, and if he's able to be more of a take lesser of a role with the offense, but more of a role with the defense, kind of more of an overseer type of role, college football better watch out. I didn't think that Ohio State would have a chance to stay this close. They shocked me. They shocked a lot of people. And my grand takeaway before we get to Stroud is I am pleased, not with the outcome, but I am pleased and very happy that the Buckeyes did what was needed over that time period to play a whole lot better than many people, myself, thought they would against Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Like you said, I mean, you flip the score and we're playing for the national championship. I mean, it literally came down to 1 point. Somebody had to win, somebody had to lose. And I do, just real quick before we get to Stroud, just speaking on from the takeaways from the game, like all I was thinking is you got to hit the portal. Like, you got to hit the portal. You got to look at what you lack on the defensive side of the ball. There's not really any questions on the offense for me, unless you don't know who your quarterback will be next year, but that's for spring practice to let it play out. You got to hit the portal. Go get a couple DBs, safeties, a couple corners, find you maybe a pass rusher, because we got a really good freshman class coming in, but I'm not big on banking on multiple freshmen to be how I can win a national title. I think come your sophomore, junior year, yes, we have a great recruiting class, but I don't think that's for next year. I think that's for 2 years from now. So I think you got to get to hit the portal, get a couple of those veteran guys, grad transfers, or guys who just want to be somewhere else, and get them to Ohio State and get them in the building. And basically throw them to the fire and get them to start, because there's got to be a little bit better out there than some of the production that we're getting on the defensive side of the ball.
I agree with you, Mo. 100% agree. We also agree, Mo, on what we saw from CJ Stroud and how that was his best game as a Buckeye. I did not expect it, and I will say it's better than what we saw in the Rose Bowl last year. He had some games where he had to play better and throw guys out there, but the combination of Stroud's legs and his arm, and for him to look as comfortable as a runner as he did, that was the best game anybody has ever seen CJ Stroud play in an Ohio State Buckeye uniform. And with that being probably the last game we ever see him play in a Buckeye uniform, many people expect him to announce he's going to the NFL draft. I mean, that's a great way to walk. It's like I said, once again, it's weird, man, because I am pleased with the way he played. It's just the outcome wasn't there. So I am pleased with his play in this game. And CJ Stroud shocked a lot of even Ohio State fans with how he played Saturday night down in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, he played the perfect game. Like, he did everything that, if you told me CJ Stroud what his best game would look like against Georgia, that's about it. And I would say he has to be willing to run, but I almost give up on that. Like, I almost, he led the team in carries, bro. Like, he had the most carries on the team with 12. He's never had double-digit carries, anything, in an Ohio State uniform. He had 34 yards, so you could be like, well, he didn't kill you with his legs, but he created an outcome. Like, he created an aspect that the Georgia defense had to account for that I know they probably spent 0 times in this 6-week stretch. 0 times on preparing for that. And so, yes, they did have to adjust, and Georgia adjusted, but at the same time, like, now that that threat happens, the offense was completely wide open. And we've been saying that all year. Like, if he would just run, it would open up the offense because it changes the way. Now you have to stop him from running, him giving it to the running back, or him throwing. And they have too many athletes on the field for that third option to be there. Like, and that's why we would ask, like, man, if we had Justin Fields or whatever, if we had JT Barrett, like we were talking about, it's not about his arm talent, it's just about the willingness to run. But man, look, he did everything he needed to do. I don't think you can look at Stroud at all and be like, man, there's better out there that could have won us that game. Don't think so. I think him and, like you said, the other QB1, Bryce Young, they both played their butts off on Saturday. But CJ Stroud, man, like, there's no way you watch that game and tell me, like, you would have replaced him for some other quarterback out there in the country right now in college and be like, he would have put us a notch above. There's nobody, I think, that would have played just as good, even better than CJ Stroud. He showed us there wasn't better out there, and we were kind of underappreciated his career, I think, as a Buckeye.
Yeah, I think we did. I think a lot of people did. And I think about Stroud, and you talk about him having the most carries. Mo, he had the second most rushing yards as a Buckeye in this game. 43 rushing yards for Dallin Hayden, 34 rushing yards for CJ Stroud. Next on the list was Xavier Johnson with 28. And here's something I'm going to say that might be one of my only knocks with the offense on Saturday with how Ryan Day coached the game. The passing game was working, and I can't take anything away from that. But I truly wonder if they would have allowed either Hayden or even Chip Trainum to run the ball a little bit more than they did. I don't think Chip Trainum had a carry in this game. I wonder how that would have helped Stroud and even allowed Ohio State to extend drives and have the ball a little bit longer. That's a question I have about this offense, because as great as Stroud was with his arm, he was able to extend the plays with his legs, and he had a couple scrambles where he just kept moving the ball, extending the play with his legs behind the line of scrimmage, kept his eyes downfield, found Marvin Harrison Jr. for 2 touchdowns that were improvising plays. And I'm like, Stroud, this is amazing. So here I am thinking, the analyst that I am, how could the game have been a little bit easier for Stroud and the passing window's been a little bit bigger for Stroud? Run the ball more. Now, it worked a little bit for Ohio State, but Ohio State was clear early on in all season, we're not going to run the ball a lot. But I wonder how, if you allow Hayden or Chip Trainum, Mine Williams was not going to be that guy. They showed clearly early he wasn't healthy, and so he didn't play much at all. But if the other 2 guys would have gotten the ball a little bit more in the running game, I wonder how that would have made the game even easier for Stroud on Saturday.
Yeah, my only thing is I don't think that was really a possibility. I think, going into the game, I know you talked to a whole bunch of people obviously doing this. You've talked about this time and time again. But like going into the game, Georgia's weak spot was guarding the outside.
Yes.
And that was our strength, and we knew it. Like their biggest weakness, and this is a team playing for a national championship, so whatever, but the biggest weakness was our biggest strength. Attack the outside. As good as Keely Ringo is, he's been known to give up big plays as well. So is the other corner. Their safeties, like they give up big plays on the outside to wide receivers. So I think we came in here and was like, okay, if that's what they're going to do, if that's their DNA, then we're going to expose that because that's what we do. If your biggest weakness is our biggest strength, when we step on the field together, then we're just going to attack it and we're not going to try and get cute. And I feel like Ryan Day didn't try and go out there and outsmart Kirby Smart and be like, you think we're going to attack you? You think I'm not going to use, or you think I'm just going to use Marvin Harrison Jr. and Ibuka and not use my running backs? Watch this. I'm going to use my like, no, don't get cute. Don't get smart. Especially they came out throwing the ball immediately and it was working. So now it's like, if you go away from it too much and the game swings a different way, would you ever be able to get that CJ Stroud momentum back? Because he had the momentum, he had the confidence early, but if you take the ball out of his hands, because quarterbacks are a little sassy and a little emotional. Mm-hmm. And so in the moment when if he's like, I'm playing like this, and now we're running the ball 3 straight times, trying to open up a run game, we're punting, you took it out of my hands. Now, does he ever get that rhythm and momentum and that confidence back? Or does he just kind of lay down because he's like, you took the ball out of my hands. This is the predicament we're in. Now you want to put it back on my shoulders and leave it all up to me. So I think it was really smart with how they did it. And just, you could tell the game plan was Stroud. In Stroud we trust. And it's going, we go as you go, man. This is your moment to shine. Everybody and their moms watching. All the NFL scouts are watching. So you could tell, like, Ryan Day just looked and be like, bro, you're great. Go be great. And our offense is going to go on the back of you because I know you can get it done. And that's what happened. I mean, essentially, he got it done.
Mo, do you think that CJ Stroud was being held back during this is straight speculation, y'all. So don't be like, it's just us giving our opinion here with this next question. Do you think Stroud was being held back during the season when Ryan Day saying don't run? Or do you think that was CJ Stroud saying, I'm going to be a pocket passer no matter what? I'm only going to run if I need to?
I think it was a little bit of like, I think they had a conversation prior to, and obviously, like you said, this is speculation. This is just me thinking of what's going on. I think they knew they had one big game this year, right? They never put the foot on the gas against anybody, except for like those 6 minutes against Penn State and those 6 minutes against Iowa. Outside of that, like they were in dogfights or not really just trying to blow teams out early unless they could. So I think they, were protecting Stroud. Like I think maybe Stroud was protecting himself. Don't get hurt. Even though really none of our running quarterbacks were known to be injured, but he's not elusive like Justin Fields. He's not as smooth a runner, a natural runner like JT Barrett was. Like, because, JT Barrett wasn't the fastest, most athletic, but he just knew how to run. He knew how to read the offense. He knew how to get to his spot. So, and he's not nearly as elusive as Justin Fields was when he would run. But I think it was more protecting CJ Stroud and knowing that we're going to play good enough to beat almost everybody. We just need to show up against Michigan. And then after that, we'll win the Big Ten. And I think that was the plan the whole time. Like, we're not going to lose 2 in a row to Michigan, so we're going to be fine. Then we're going to win the Big Ten, and then all bets are off. We'll let you loose when it comes to the playoffs. But, I mean, just think about it. Had we beat Michigan and won the Big Ten and we were the number 1 seed, do you think, like, if we were the number 1 seed in the playoff, do you think we unleash CJ Stroud? Like, or do you think because we're in the underdogs that we ended up making those calls? Because I'm not sure if we unleashed CJ Stroud if we were the 1 seed and considered the best team in the country.
I would want to say they unleashed him because we saw a different style of, obviously, more of an up-tempo, similar to what we saw on Saturday. We saw more of an up-tempo, quicker tempo style of offense in 2020 against Clemson when it seemed like Justin Fields played the best game of his life. So that's the only way I could connect it with, like, hey, Fields in 2020 was just like kind of, I won't say going through the motions, but he knew he was a better quarterback, and Ohio State was a better team than everybody that played the Big Ten that year, even getting through Northwestern. But remember this, though. Maybe it was not so much that outcome, because Justin Fields against Northwestern 2020 Big Ten championship. Ohio State won the game. But that may have been Justin Fields' worst game he played at Ohio State. So it took a game where people are saying what's going on, questioning your play, questioning the play calling, questioning what's going on. All of a sudden, after Fields in Northwestern, and of course, you want to get payback against Clemson. Next thing you know, we'll get this monster game from Justin Fields where it seems like he's having an out-of-body experience, gets popped in his ribs, comes back in, very next play, he's on the field, touchdown. Well, Stroud, he's having to field the same questions. What's going on? What are you doing? Why are you playing like this? And what does he do? He plays out of his mind. So I don't know. I'm not sure. But there is a weird connection between 2020 and 2022 and how the quarterbacks QB1 at Ohio State played after the final, say, regular season game or championship game for Fields and then the game for Stroud. Mo, when it comes to Stroud running, do you think what we saw translates to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, because he wasn't trying to run too much. Yes, he had 12 carries, but he can move. He can move out of the pocket. We know that he can create off-level throws. Is he going to be Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields? No, but I think he can be Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, kind of scrambler. Like, I'll scramble when I need to. You know, Trevor Lawrence he's actually fast, but they'll scramble when they need to. They'll go get you to 3 or 4 yards if the defense gives it to them. But at the same time, they also will throw 30, 40 times and be very effective. And I think CJ Stroud could literally be that. But the fact that scouts get to look and know that his legs can have an effect on a game, I think that's going to make them fall in love with him even more, because his arm strength and talent and being able to make every throw is not the question. It was more like his heart. And sometimes he doesn't seem fully engaged. Like, he's just going to, and he hadn't had that moment. And it just sucks for him because his moment resulted in a loss. But I mean, he had the moment. Like we talked about, everybody, he had a Heisman moment. Now everybody else, they usually win those games. But even remember, everybody fell in love with Max Duggan after losing in the Big 12 championship because he couldn't. So you're allowed to have that moment and gain everybody's respect and still lose, especially in a tight game like that. It just sucks for him. And you could tell, I mean, he was crying after. You could just tell it hurt him that I played like this. But yeah, I do think it's running translates to the NFL, because I think a college or an NFL scout and the NFL coach is going to know, like, I don't have to send him out there to be Lamar Jackson. But at the same time, like, he can get me those few extra yards if that's what the defense gives him. On 3rd and 4, he might could create a first down, you know, with his legs, which I think would add major upside to what people already probably think about CJ Stroud right now as a prospect anyway.
Mo, I'm not going to do like how will Stroud's legacy be remembered at Ohio State. His official announcement, at least at the time of this recording, has not been announced of him saying he's declaring for the NFL draft. So I'm not going to go and say legacy talk here. But overall, this season, since the season itself, 2022 football season is complete for CJ Stroud, how do you think you will remember CJ Stroud for his play during this season?
Well, I'd say we wasted CJ Stroud's talent this year, if you want me to be honest. Like, yes, we played great, but seeing how we played against Georgia and seeing how he played is like, hey, maybe if you were holding him back and protecting him, maybe that was the worst thing for CJ Stroud, because that team that showed up against Georgia, like, they wouldn't have lost to anybody. And, you know, Michigan blew us out. I get it. But, I mean, it's kind of tough. And I even go back to last year. It's kind of tough for Ohio State fans to really love CJ Stroud when all you did was amaze us in the Rose Bowl and lose to Michigan twice. Like, you know, as great as he played in a lot of games and he had a heck of a career, it's going to be hard for a lot of people, and he'll always be underappreciated, because at the end of the day, like, you're going to be remembered for the negative, because you're the only quarterback that can say, you know, Michigan beat you twice and you didn't really show the dog this year. But I still think, like, man, I just feel like when I look back at this year, like, I feel like there was something we didn't get because of the Georgia performance, because we've seen how great he could be. And he was great week in and week out. I mean, it was a roller coaster this year. But I just feel like we left stuff out on the field throughout the season that could have made this team very special and maybe set us up in a predicament where we wouldn't have had to been playing as underdogs against Georgia. Maybe we could have been the 1 seed. So I do look at it, I'm like, man, Stroud is great. He can make every throw, but I just feel like with the way we had him play, then I think we just left part of some greatness for his career at Ohio State. I think we left it out there on the field.
Yeah, this for a quarterback and with the caliber of Stroud and the way that he plays the game, I do think this year you have to say, is it a disappointment that it ended the way that it did? Absolutely, because CJ Stroud is a quarterback that he's let's just put it this way. In the college football playoff, he's the best quarterback. Like, he is clearly the best quarterback, and generally the best quarterback wins those games. So, yes, you can say that this season may have been a disappointment with how it ended, but I do think I'm with you, man. They could have done some stuff better to help him throughout this season, and injuries, you have to take injuries in there and take that with a grain of salt, because the running back rotation was not, when you got Henderson and Williams hurt every other week, bro, it's hard. And even for a quarterback, it's hard for him to get into a rhythm. He drops back. Oh, it's number 19. I haven't really handed the ball off to him. I'm trying to figure out in the game where he likes to get the ball. Is it higher? Is it lower? Is it right there in the middle? Does he take it immediately and squeeze? Do I have some time? Like, these are the little details that Stroud is figuring out in season, in the game. And so I do think it was a little bit of a disappointment as far as the outcome. But also at the same time, after this season, at the end of 2022, I have a greater appreciation for Stroud, the quarterback, during this season than I had previously. And it all goes back to how he played on Saturday. Yes, prisoner of the moment, you may want to say that, but I think Stroud could have played better. But for QB1 at Ohio State, I am leaving this season overall probably more positive than I thought I was going to. I'm not going to rip CJ Stroud for his performance this season. A lot of stuff was outside of his control, and he was doing things that he was coached to do. But when the reins were let go and Stroud was doing his thing, Stroud, to me, was a phenomenal quarterback in this season. And I am glad that Ohio State had him as QB1 in 2022. Mo Murphy, you're here with us to kick off the first full show of 2023. If you could let everyone know, maybe this is their first time checking out Locked On Buckeyes. A lot of people checked out the instant reaction show we had at the conclusion of the Peach Bowl. Mo, let everyone know where they can follow you on Twitter and also where they can catch the UpnFlamez podcast and some of the great things you guys are doing over there at the Off the Ball Network.
Yeah, so you can follow me right here, like I say below, at Mo_Cheese15 on Twitter. You can check out UpnFlamez anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, all those good places. And also check out Field Stormers as well, because obviously if you're listening to this, then you do like college football enough to at least like the Buckeyes. Hosted by myself and Walker, but it's a weekly college football show that we do. The season's almost over, so, we're going to break down the bowl games and get into draft stuff and spring practices and all that, and we'll have some player interviews over the course of the spring and summer. So definitely check that out. And as always, Jay, it's an honor for me to come on here on Locked On Buckeyes and just be able to talk Buckeyes.
And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317 at gmail.com. We will continue our breakdown of the Peach Bowl and what happened at Ohio State. We'll also be looking to turning the page to see what's going to happen next. Already have one player, the long snapper, who has entered the transfer portal. Mason Arnold was a backup long snapper, but I anticipate a few more players entering the portal during this portal window that is currently open. We'll be discussing that and a few more things as the off season has officially started for your Ohio State football team.